So do you struggle with just feeling like you're not good enough? Like there's times that you feel like someone is going to see right through you, call you out for maybe not knowing something well enough or being a phony. Well, this is called imposter syndrome. And it is a heck of a lot more prevalent than most of us realize. And most of us have experienced this at some point in our life. The truth is that imposter syndrome can become our own personal kryptonite. It can cripple us, it can weaken us, it can create this monumental form of self-doubt that's like this snowball effect that has the ability to damage so many aspects of our life. So today we're going to jump in looking at what imposter syndrome is and how the heck to change our angle a little bit when it comes to squishing, squelching, and doing away with imposter syndrome within our own life. Let's rock and roll, my friends. So the reality is about 70% of people in the general population struggle or have struggled when it comes to imposter syndrome. That is a heck of a lot of people. And I'm going to tell you that this is something throughout different stages of my life I've struggled with. And so when we talk about identifying what is imposter syndrome, so it's when we get to this point that we have self-doubting thoughts that are going on that are discounting our success. We're questioning ourselves. We're undermining our value. And it's something that truly holds us back, personally and professionally, and it's something I believe with all my heart we need to talk about. And yes, it's been out there in blurbs and drips and all that jazz, but when it comes to the reality that it affects so many people, and I think it's like, well, how do I really talk about this? You know, how do I talk to my friends about it? I'm struggling with it, and realizing I'm first being able to identify, okay, this is something I struggle with. And secondly, it's the ability to be comfortable with, because we're all human, that this is something that's not, we need to beat ourselves up for, but instead we need to take a step forward and say, this is something that I need to work on. And with that, it does take time, that this is something we go forward with, that it takes time for us to kind of dismantle, because we've been wired this for so many years. It takes time, and we're not always patient. We can be really tough on ourselves. It takes time, and giving yourself kudos for being willing to work on it. And that is awesome. And for us to kind of be looking around of what we think where we're supposed to be, man, that can beat us up. So kind of giving some examples when it comes to imposter syndrome. It comes to a point that, like, when we have this feeling, when we've achieved something, we've hit a goal, and then from that, instead of connecting it to hard work, connecting it to sacrifice, something in terms of our actual value, we dismiss it as like, that was luck. And this is something we need to turn upside down. This mindset, okay, where I'm not good enough, and yeah, it was luck, I didn't really deserve it, that it can trigger anxiety and have us questioning our overall self-worth. And it's all these things going through your mind that hold you back from contributing. And I believe when it comes to imposter syndrome, it's those of us, like, we're hardworking and we know our stuff. We don't know everything because we're human, but the reality is these kind of looming thoughts of, it's something I don't deserve. I am not this value, or I don't know enough. And it's getting to the point that we're able to just squish those thoughts and replace them with something different. So now we've defined what imposter syndrome is. We're now going to shift gears, and how do I allow myself to phase out and replace this with a mindset that's conducive to something that's positive for growth and for me to be healthy. The first thing that we're going to look at is the aspect of thought stopping. So whether you are 25 or you're 65, the messages that we send ourselves on a daily basis, right? These messages can be toxic. They can truly become our personal kryptonite, but they also can be reversed. So looking at it as a positive instead of, oh my gosh, I'm thinking all these negatives all the time and it's toxic. Well, they can be changed. You're still alive, you're going, but it's you being willing to change things a little bit. So with this, it's beginning to challenge yourself. So what I am going to throw at you is the first 24-hour challenge. And this takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of work. We can kind of feel kind of frustrated, but it's identifying what is going on in our mind. So for 24 hours, it's kind of taking a step back from you. And anytime there's something negative that comes out of your mouth, there's something negative about yourself, you're cutting yourself in terms of your value, I want you to write it down. When those negatives come out verbally or they come out in your mind, I want you to replace them with something that's positive. And you could say, well, that's silly. It's not silly, because if this negativity, if this toxicity, if this questioning your value is kind of brimming, simmering, it's really kind of holds up more space than the positive, we need to kind of kick in high gear and take action. And this is where identifying, okay, I'm in the meeting and I have these thoughts in my head of like, you just can't do it. You know what? It's okay. I'm aware that I said that. And it's then saying something positive about yourself. And if you're in that situation that you're willing to take a deep breath and raise your hand and contribute, that's awesome. But we could take one step at a time. The identification and replacing that negative with a positive or something constructive is really important. It's really, really important, because the more we're aware, right? This is that thought replacement. We go from something of like, okay, I know I have negatives, but it's instead of just letting those negatives go down the lane, it's stopping them, replacing them with something that's constructive. That is the first step. That is super important. That every angle, whether it's that business meeting or your home, and you hesitate with your kids, and it says, I can't. It's stopping, replacing, and reflecting at the end of the day. This is a 24-hour challenge of where I'm at. Okay, and wow, that was a lot. And it was a lot. But it's taking one step at a time. So thought stopping is super powerful. It can absolutely be a game changer, but it's sticking with it. When it comes to the aspect of imposter syndrome, this is in it for the long term. It's not just a set of hours. It's saying, I am going forward and I'm fighting for myself. The thought stopping is something that, okay, I'm not dealing with the toxic anymore. I'm not dealing with the funky thinking. It is going to be taking ownership and going forward and being constructive, encouraging, and knowing growth, boom, is on the table. And the reality is, it's not just thought stopping. This is a game plan. It is multifaceted. So there comes other areas of this. So second thing that we're going to look at today is, what are you absorbing? What are you absorbing? What messages are you soaking in? Because this has a hand in terms of how we think about ourselves, in terms of the prevalence of what is triggering this imposter syndrome. So sometimes without even knowing, that things that we're taking in are impacting us like big time, our thought process. So the question is, what are you taking in when it comes to social media? A big one that can have us questioning when it comes to what society defines as, being successful or being worthy or being in a place you're supposed to be, wherever you're supposed to be. This can get in our mind and absolutely trigger when it comes to the prevalence of imposter syndrome. So this is where it's reevaluating. What am I absorbing? And sometimes we need to take that, we have to visit a little bit and say, you know what? This is going to be switched up. And so I'm not getting rid of social media if that's a decision you make, but I'm going to change what I am actually watching, reading, and absorbing. Big one. Next is looking at your inner circle, whether it's a group chat, whether it's friends that you're hanging out. When it comes to receiving constructive criticism, I always say having the ability to receive constructive criticism in life is really important within our friend group, because we have areas of growth we will always need. But there's a difference between someone who can provide constructive criticism versus somebody who is deflating. If you have people in your life that just squish you in terms of your value, have you questioning your worth, that needs to be reevaluated a little bit. Your inner circle will have a bearing on how you look at yourself, the things that go on in your head, how your heart is feeling. It absolutely is connected to imposter syndrome. It absolutely is. Are you encouraged? If you are, that is awesome. If not, it might be time to kind of utilize your voice. to kind of take ownership and maybe setting down the rules. Like, listen, this is not floating anymore. I know we've kind of talked like this and it's like always been like we're kidding around, but I'm in a place that we need to encourage. And maybe there's people that aren't even aware of how the sarcasm is just kind of, whoa, it's a little intense. And we, you know, I've heard over the years, there's always an element of truth in things. And we could say, I'm just kidding. But how much truth is in there? Shifting a little bit and saying, I'm going to take ownership of what I'm absorbing. Part of that is social media. Part of that is the people around me. I'm taking ownership. And with that, when we kind of lay down some boundaries, is also, do you have a wingman? Somebody in your life that is kind of an accountability partner that you can share with them. You know what, man, I've been struggling. I've been having these thoughts in my head. I'm questioning myself, my value. It's holding me back from my performance and my quality of life in all areas of my life. And it's super good to be able to talk about where we're at. And it's not being ashamed about it because you're human. And when 70% of the population is either currently or has struggled with this is really prevalent. And this is where talking about mental health is really significant, really critical, and something we need to continue putting out on the front lines. So the third component when it comes to what we absorb is the info that you're taking in, what you're watching on TV, movies that you're watching, the radio, whatever it is. All these things, like, what are you listening to? And it's funny, sometimes we can be taking things in that trigger us to question where we're at in life, question our value, and we might not even realize it. So that's part of that 24-hour challenge, is saying, what am I absorbing? It's loving and valuing yourself enough of being particular of what you're allowing in to with your eyes, your ears, and your heart. Be protective, and knowing that these negatives, these things that can really weaken you, can truly become like this personal kryptonite. Do not let that happen. And if you have, today is a new day. Stop beating yourself up or thinking, I've lost all this time. Now we're only foolish when we continue, where we take in information that has the ability to project us forward. And when we don't do anything about it, that's when we're foolish. So let's start on page 1. It's taking a step and going forward. And these things are super important. And it's allowing ourselves to say, you know what, I'm no longer going to discount my value or my significance. So you were made with intention. There's no mistakes that are made. And it's allowing yourself to give yourself the green light in valuing yourself. And allowing yourself to work on getting those thoughts that are in there, that thought stopping, working on what am I taking in, because then we begin to go forward and become healthier, stronger, and it has a trickle-down effect with our relationships, how we look at life, how we do at work, within our home and personal life. It's all connected. And that is a beautiful thing, and knowing that you're worth that journey. So as you go ahead, what are you listening to? What are you taking in? And I'd love for you to continue, if you enjoyed today's video, to check this out. Check it out, working on growth, looking at going forward, and knowing that every day is a gift. Thanks for tuning in, my friends. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe. Wishing you a tremendous amount of peace, love, and goodness.